The Nebraska Athletic Department recently sent out a survey to 200,000 people. And it was a survey about what changes you'd like to see at Memorial Stadium. That survey went to donors and boosters and season ticket holders, and if you've ever bought a ticket and got on their list. And I thought that would be an interesting kind of off-season subject to talk about with all my friends on YouTube or wherever else. This is John Johnston with Corn Nation, and I'd like to go through this stuff. This was kind of an extensive survey, just about everything. They asked about seating. They asked about restrooms. Is there enough restrooms? Do you not like the restrooms? Do you like the concessions? Are there enough concession stands? How do you feel about waiting in line? How is your parking experience? How is your tailgating experience? Do you have cell phone coverage? Do you have Wi-Fi? I mean, all of these things are important questions because they have to do with the game day experience. You know, if you can't if you can't go to the game and get coverage with your phone, then you don't get to put stuff on social media. And yes, that is a big deal these days. It's fun. Yeah, it's part of the experience. It's part of going to events now, and just accept it. And that's the way it is. I haven't actually sat in a seat in Memorial Stadium for a long time. You get those rental chairs that people use, and those seem like they would be good if you're there like me and you're kind of older and you have back problems. And you're like, oh, thank God I can have back rest and just sitting on this with the benches and they squish people like in there like they're sardines when people aren't as small as they were 20 years ago or 10 years ago or 2 years ago for matter. I'd like to know in the comments, what is your experience? I mean, what would you like to see with regards to seating and things like that? Now, they do get into this survey and they do ask about alcohol sales. You know, I know there's a lot of people that, you know, they're going to go, well, we don't need alcohol sales, and that'll just turn things into a disaster. Actually, in 2012, Freakonomics did an episode that I will link to in the show notes. A West Virginia study showed fewer issues when they started selling alcohol, and what I mean by that is police-related incidents. Fewer issues when they started selling alcohol in this stadium. So why would that be? Well, number one, you probably have people, listen, I used to drink a lot. I don't drink anymore. I still have the mind of a drinker. I understand. People get really wasted before they walk into a stadium because they're like, oh my God, I'm going to be without alcohol for a few hours. I might as well get really drunk so I can keep this buzz going. Well, if you sell alcohol in the stadium, they might be less likely to do that. Because you know, if you're a drunk guy, coming down off the buzz is the last thing you want. So you can go into the stadium and you're going to be paying premium prices for alcohol. You know that. Let's see, probably anywhere from $8 to $15 a beer. So when people kind of go, well, I don't want people getting drunk in the stadium, I doubt there's very many people that are going to be getting drunk in the stadium at $8 to $15 a beer. It's just expensive. They would do that beforehand and be drunk as shit when they got there. And like I said, may be less apt to drink heavily before the game and just keep drinking during it. I found another one, a thesis by somebody from North Carolina done in 2016 that really was kind of neutral. And it said there weren't any less incidents, but there really weren't any more either. So the reason why I'm telling you about these studies is because they've been done. You could find a study for whatever you wanted to show, whether you were for alcohol sales or against alcohol sales. So if you get people quoting stuff, you know, it's like anything else with science. You pick your side and you present that. I think the reason for alcohol sales is, again, it's the people like me who would sit at home and watch a game and say, you know what? I can go to my fridge and get a cup of whatever I want. Used to be alcohol. Now it's not. But I can get that whenever I want and come back and sit down at my couch and enjoy my game by myself. And they want to be able to reproduce that in the stadium with the hope that maybe you'll enjoy socializing more if you have some alcohol. which I guess I don't have a problem with that. I think that they want to increase revenue sales. Let's see, Minnesota, I know, had about 900,000 in revenue the first time they did it. Now, the key to this is you're going to sell this much more alcohol, or you're going to have this much more security staff, because the last thing you want, especially when you're starting to implement this, if you do, is to have more incidents that aren't handled. In other words, the situation where you go, I was in this section, this guy was really drunk, and we asked for security and nobody came. That's what you don't want to have happen if you're Nebraska or anybody else that's getting into this situation. And it would be logical to think that if you started selling alcohol at Memorial Stadium, that you're probably going to start selling alcohol at PBA or Devaney or whatever other centers you're going to have to play sports. Haymarket Park, how'd you like to have a beer and baseball? Those go together, right? Beer, baseball on the berm. Sounds fantastic, right? The other thing is, you're selling alcohol in the stadium, you have less likely people trying to sneak alcohol in. I was an 80s child at Nebraska, UNL, when I was a student, and we snuck stuff in all the time. So you want to stop that? Sell alcohol in the stadium. They asked about the balloon release. I quite frankly think this is one tradition that needs to go away. It's, in an age in which we're supposed to be more environmental friendly, I think it's kind of a dumb tradition. And it's a waste. It's a waste of resources. And if your response to that is the balloons are biodegradable, I'm thinking more about helium, because, it is a resource. Balloon release? No. Here's some of the other things that were in this. A loge box or a luge box. And what this is a private box area. Okay? Let me read parts of this about the private box area they're talking about. Renovations to Memorial Stadium could include loge boxes or luge box. If I can't pronounce it, it's probably not. It's too classy for me. But these boxes would offer the ultimate in private box viewing while allowing patrons to experience the roar of the crowd with every touchdown. They could seat from 4 to 8 people in the comfort of chairs on casters or fixed theater-style seating, and provide access to an upscale exclusive lounge to mix and mingle with fellow Nebraskans. Boxes could be located outdoors and undercover and offer other amenities, such as an all-inclusive pre-game buffet and beverage service, in-box counter and refrigerator, flat-screen television monitor, access to climate-controlled club lounge with casual seating areas and TVs, private restrooms, access to exclusive premium elevators and entrance. In other words, what this is you'd be paying money to have your own private little area where you and your buddies could be, away from the diseased common people. Which I think it sounds kind of interesting, doesn't it? It sounds like, yeah, cool. I gotta get a premium elevator. Luxury suites. Why wouldn't you buy a luxury suite? Field level suites. I think that was the loge box we just talked about, or luge box or some damn thing. Private memberships. They also talked about having a private club in Memorial Stadium with a 5-star restaurant, and you could rent it out for business meetings and things like that. I think that's kind of neat, but that whole flow of that area of this survey looks like really boils down to how can we get more money out of fewer people? Because they're going to have to if they want to preserve the sellout streak, which is sacrilege if you don't, they're going to have to expand the stadium because our 18-inch butts are now 24-inch butts at the least. So they're going to have less people and get more money out of the less people because they don't want their revenue to go down, because that's sacrilegious too. And I got the idea. I really, I think that a lot of this, number one, is more money out of fewer people. But the other thing is they asked about gambling. And I think that there's a lot of us who are doing sports sites like I run Coronation who look out there and kind of go, the newspapers are dying left and right, and the media people are getting killed all over the place. The Lincoln and Omaha papers are basically one paper now managed by Lee Enterprises. But All of that stuff is kind of condensing. But what is not condensing is gambling. And gambling is appearing all over the place. And I believe Nebraska just passed a new law that allowed gambling to expand everywhere or something like that. Well, are they going to have gambling at Memorial Stadium? In the great cathedral of Nebraska? Blasphemy. Or not. Depends on how you fill out this survey. But I get the idea. You know, it's more money out of fewer people. Do you want alcohol in your stadium? And do you want to gamble amongst your friends, your exclusive friends who aren't the same as the diseased common people? What would you change? I would like to know in the comments section what you would change about Memorial Stadium. I mean, what would you arrange? Because I know what I'd arrange. It's not covered in here. Here's what I would change if I was in charge. I would take the student section that's way the hell off into the distance, and I would take those students and I'd move them right over above the tunnel walk. And then I'd move the band over there with them. And that way, the students could cheer their fellow students, at least we're pretending they are, when they run out the tunnel. And then those students who are their fellow students could return to students who are still waiting at the game because they're enjoying themselves and having fun, and the university actually acted like they were important, which they might be to the future, instead of like signing them way off into the distance up in some freaking stadium completely far away from the tunnel walk area. So you get it, tunnel walk, come out, the students cheer, the band plays. At the end of the game, the student athlete football player guys come back and they stand there and they yell or they sing a song with the band playing. This is going on all over the place. It's a great tradition, I think. It's really neat for I would think it's neat for the students. I certainly would have stayed for that if I was a student then. Hell, I'd probably stay for it now. But that's what I would change. And I know that, you know, in Memorial Stadium, you got all these people that treat Memorial Stadium like they're going to a cathedral, like I mentioned. You know, and I honestly believe that's why we can't change anything. They tried to change the tunnel walk and people were confused by it. They've added some things like in the end of the third quarter or whatever with the light show and the Thunderstruck and stuff like that. But by and large, not a lot of changes. I mean, the band really doesn't even change that much. And I got to believe a lot of that is like having a new pastor come to your church and he changes the service around a little bit and people shit their pants. They're like, hey, you can't be changing. That's our church. I've sat in that same pew for 30 years. And that's the problem with the changes here. Like when I said earlier, by the way, if you made it this far, thank you. Like I said earlier about the balloon release, get rid of it. I probably pissed a lot of people off in saying that. Why? Because it's a tradition. You either change or you die. That's how it goes. I think it's going to be interesting to see if any changes come out of this. I don't know if making changes when your football team sucks shit and people are really not that interested in it unless Scott Frost can turn this thing around. But we're going to see what Trev comes up with out of this, or what, you know, what the survey shows. Maybe they'll release some information. And like, I'd like to hear your thoughts about this. I'd like you to subscribe so I can actually justify doing more of these videos. And I guess you hit the bell for notifications or something like that. Thank you for watching. This is John Johnston, Core Nation. Go Big Red.